Imagine you are building a house, and the local city tells you that it will take them 5 years to run a water pipe to your property. If you really need to move in today, what do? You don't wait. You dig your own well.
Right now, the global tech industry is essentially digging its own wells. They have billions of dollars of data centers sitting idle, waiting on grid interconnections that are years away. So, rather than wait for the local utility to show up with a wire, they're taking matters into their own hands.
The solution they have landed on is as brute force as it gets. To power the most advanced cognitive technology humanity has ever created, they're basically bolting heavy industrial power plants directly onto the sides of their data centers.
It is a messy, expensive, and frantic scramble. But it is happening right now, and it is completely reshaping the energy landscape of the 2020s. One small thing up front. We genuinely love these companies as stories, but we're explaining them, not recommending them.
So treat all of this as food for your own thinking, not financial advice. Stay curious, stay a little skeptical, and make your own calls. Welcome back to The Working Thesis. Over our past episodes, we mapped out the $2 trillion AI backlog, the overloaded national grid, and the massive multi-year wait times for the transformers needed to step power down to a usable voltage.
The core problem is the queue. If you want to connect a massive new load to the public grid, you are stuck in a bureaucratic traffic jam that can delay your project by half a decade. But the hyperscalers and neoclouds simply cannot wait.
So they are finding ways to bypass the interconnection queue entirely. In the industry, this is known as behind-the-meter power or self-supply. Instead of pulling electrons from the public grid, you generate them yourself, right on the data center campus.
If you don't connect to the public grid, you don't have to wait for the interconnection study. You don't have to wait for the local utility to upgrade their substations. You just bring your own power and flip the switch.
But you can't run an AI data center on a few rooftop solar panels. You need firm, reliable, 24/7 baseload power. And in 2026, there is only one fuel source that can deploy at the scale the tech industry needs, on the timeline they require.
That fuel is natural gas. To bypass the grid bottlenecks, developers are currently planning roughly 100 gigawatts of behind-the-meter on-site natural gas generation to power data centers directly.
100 gigawatts is a staggering number. Remember, earlier in the series, we noted that the entire U.S. data center industry needs about 140 to 150 gigawatts of new capacity by 2030. The fact that 100 gigawatts of that is currently being targeted for on-site natural gas shows just how desperate the scramble is.
Natural gas has become the undisputed bridge fuel of the AI revolution. It is the stopgap measure that gets the data centers online today, while the tech industry waits for the grid and cleaner baseload technologies to mature over the next decade.
The pivot to natural gas isn't just about speed. It is also driven by cold, hard interconnection economics. Connecting a power source to the grid is incredibly expensive, and those costs are highly dependent on the type of power you are connecting.
When you look at the raw numbers, connecting natural gas generation is remarkably cheap. It costs roughly $24 per kilowatt to connect a gas plant. If you contrast that with wind or solar, those interconnection costs can easily soar to $250 or more per kilowatt.
The difference comes down to the physics of the grid. Gas is firm and predictable. The grid operators know exactly what it will do. Wind and solar are intermittent, which requires the grid to install expensive buffering and balancing equipment to handle the fluctuations.
So, if you are a data center developer looking at a spreadsheet, on-site natural gas is not only faster to deploy because it avoids the public queue, it is structurally cheaper to connect to your own microgrid.
But just because natural gas is the chosen solution doesn't mean it is easy to acquire. The sudden pivot by the tech industry has created a massive demand shock for the companies that actually manufacture the power generation equipment.
If you want to build a highly efficient natural gas power plant, you want a heavy-duty gas turbine. But there are only a few companies in the world, like GE Vernova, Siemens, and Mitsubishi, that make these massive machines at scale.
And just like the power transformers we discussed in our last episode, the order books for these gas turbines are completely full. If a data center developer calls one of those manufacturers today, they are likely going to be told that the turbines are booked out to roughly 2028.
The tech industry tried to bypass the grid bottleneck. only to crash headfirst into an industrial manufacturing bottleneck. You can bring your own power, but only if you can actually buy the machine that generates it.
Because the heavy-duty turbines are sold out, developers are moving further down the equipment list. If they can't get a turbine, they are buying massive reciprocating engines and heavy industrial generator sets, often called gensets.
These are essentially gigantic versions of the engines you might find in a ship or a locomotive. They are less efficient than the top-tier turbines, and they require more maintenance, but they are available faster.
It is a perfect example of the compromises happening in the market right now. The pressure to fulfill that $2 trillion AI backlog is so intense that companies are willing to accept suboptimal, less efficient generation equipment just to get the GPUs turned on.
When capital is waiting, efficiency takes a backseat to speed. If a genset can get $1 billion facility processing tokens 2 years earlier than a turbine, the operator will buy the genset every single time.
There is another technology stepping in to fill this gap, one that is slightly more elegant than a massive reciprocating engine. We are seeing a surge of interest in on-site fuel cells.
A great example of this is Bloom Energy. They manufacture solid oxide fuel cells that convert natural gas into electricity without combustion. Because there is no combustion, the emissions profile is cleaner, and they don't require the massive water cooling that traditional turbines do.
The killer feature of fuel cells is their deployment speed. You can order a fuel cell array and have it generating baseload power on your data center campus in a matter of months, not years.
They are modular, meaning you can just keep stacking them up to increase your megawatt output. For a data center desperately trying to bypass a 5-year grid interconnection delay, a fuel cell that arrives on a truck and powers up in months is a game changer.
Beyond building their own power plants, data centers are also changing how they interact with the grid itself to try and jump the queue. One of the most fascinating developments is the rise of the flexible load agreement.
Historically, a data center demanded 100% of its power, 100% of the time. But grid operators hate that. They need flexibility during peak hours, like a hot summer afternoon when everyone turns on their air conditioning.
So, to get grid approval faster, some AI data centers are essentially making a deal with the utility. They agree to dial back their power consumption, sometimes shutting down training runs entirely during those peak grid stress events.
In exchange for acting as a massive shock absorber for the grid, the utility lets them skip the line. It is a win-win. The utility gets a more stable grid, and the tech company gets to energize their building years ahead of schedule.
The scramble for power is so intense that it is even breathing life back into dead infrastructure. We are seeing utility companies and tech giants looking at retired, shuttered power plants and deciding to turn them back on.
If an old coal or gas plant was retired 5 years ago, the physical interconnection to the high-voltage grid is often still sitting there, unused. The data center can come in, buy the site, replace the old generators with cleaner tech, and instantly inherit those priceless grid connection rights.
It is the ultimate real estate play. You aren't buying the land. You are buying the right to push electrons onto the wire without waiting for a new permit. We're going to see a lot of industrial relics resurrected purely to feed neural networks. Now, we have to talk about the caveat to this massive pivot toward natural gas and on-site generation. The tech industry has spent the last decade making very loud, very public commitments to achieving net zero carbon emissions.
Bolting 100 gigawatts of natural gas generation onto data centers is in direct conflict with those net zero targets. There are serious emissions and permitting tails to this strategy. Local communities might welcome a quiet data center, but they are far less likely to welcome a smokestack in their backyard.
The companies justify this by framing gas as a necessary bridge. They argue that if they don't use gas today, the AI revolution stalls. They buy carbon offsets and promise to transition to cleaner fuels like green hydrogen once the supply chains mature.
But for right now, the reality is that the next generation of artificial intelligence is going to be trained on the back of fossil fuels. The speed of the AI rollout simply outpaced the speed of the clean energy transition.
There is one final risk to this scramble. It is entirely possible that the industry is overbuilding this near-term gas infrastructure. As we mentioned earlier in the series, the demand for compute isn't slowing, but it is relocating and broadening.
The models are getting significantly more efficient. We are pushing more AI workloads out to the edge, to our phones and laptops. If the algorithms become wildly more energy efficient over the next 3 years, some of these rush-ordered on-site gas plants might end up being unnecessary.
But that is a risk the hyperscalers are willing to take. In their view, overbuilding power is a rounding error compared to the existential risk of not having enough compute to compete in the AI race. They would rather build a gas plant they don't need than lose the market entirely. So, we have the bridge. Natural gas, fuel cells, and flexible load agreements are keeping the AI backlog moving today. But everyone in the industry knows this is not the long-term solution. Gas is a stopgap.
If AI is going to scale to the heights the market is predicting, it needs a power source that is perfectly matched to its profile, something that is incredibly dense, runs 24/7 without interruption, and produces zero carbon emissions.
There is only one technology on Earth that fits that exact description. Next time on The Working Thesis, we are going to look at the ultimate answer to the AI power problem. We are going to explore the technology that every tech billionaire is currently pouring money into.
The bridge is gas, but the destination is the atom. We tackle the nuclear question in episode 6. See you then.
That's a wrap for today. Thanks for thinking it through with us. We're just testing our theses out loud, one day at a time.
Catch you on the next one. Stay curious and tell us where we're wrong.